But when, and you've already mentioned, not just the Standard, but a number of newspaper reports the next day headlined this. It wasn't just a question of it appearing as one part of a long discussion. Presumably at this point, it must have struck you that something had hit home. Were you at all concerned that in an issue of such moment, that intelligence intelligence of a certain nature was getting an exaggerated sense of importance?
You know, the thing that strikes me most now, when you go back and look at the dossier and how it was received, it was actually received as somewhat dull and cautious at the time.
Yes, we've been told. Yeah.
You know, it really assumed a vastly greater importance at a later time, precisely because of the allegation, which was an extraordinarily serious one, that we, Downing Street, had deliberately falsified the intelligence, which of course we hadn't.
I mean, the importance of the dossier, of course, is in part of its immediate political impact. And no doubt you're right to say the general view that this was telling us what we already knew. But if it was saying something quite important, that we had detailed intelligence on Iraqi WMD that led you to certain conclusions. And therefore, in a sense, if it was considered old news, it was because you'd already been successful in establishing that point of view.
I don't think it was us that was successful in establishing that point of view. I think you would have been hard pushed to have found virtually anybody who doubted he had WMD and a WMD capability and program, because we'd been through this whole saga, 10 years of military action. As I say, I took the first military action in respect of Baghdad with President Clinton in 1998. So it wasn't that so much. And incidentally, I just point out that in the statement with the dossier, which I think, to be frank, it was the statement people would have heard rather than the forward, I actually say specifically, why now, people ask. I agree, I cannot say that this month or next, even this year or next, Saddam will use his weapons. So the issue was not, he's about to launch an attack.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. What I'm trying to get at is the quality of the intelligence, because, just to take an example, President Chirac, certainly in September 2002, seemed to believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. But I think he also said, but I've seen no proof. And the issue that is now important, because you've decided to go down the UN route, is that that detail is going to be tested. Indeed, you had a press conference with President Yeltsin in October, where he said he didn't believe in it, and you said, well, that's for the inspectors to find out. I think you did. So
yeah, no, I was merely reflecting on the fact that well, there's a whole issue to do with Russia and its view of how to proceed.
There is indeed a view, but the point, just to keep focused on at the moment, is that the actual quality of the intelligence that the British had and the Americans had was more important about whether this was a shared assumption, because we were now proposing, or you were hoping, indeed, as the dossier was published, the President had promised to take this through the UN route. So the quality of the information was important. This brings us to yes, it's been pointed out to me. I said Yeltsin rather than Putin. This is important. We get to the forward. You said in the forward that the assessed intelligence has established beyond doubt that Iraq has continued to produce chemical and biological weapons. Now, you've already mentioned the JIC reports that were patchy, sporadic, limited, etc. Given that, was it wise to say that intelligence is ever beyond doubt? Wasn't this setting yourself up for a higher standard of proof than it might be possible to sustain?
I think what I said in the forward was that I believed it was beyond doubt. What I believe the assessed intelligence is established beyond doubt is that Saddam has continued to produce chemical and biological weapons. I did believe it. I mean, that was the... And I did believe it, frankly, beyond doubt. And
beyond your doubt, but beyond anybody's doubt?
Look, if I'd taken, for example, the words out of even the 9th of March 2002, or the March 2002 JIC assessment, it said it was clear that. Now, if I'd said it was clear that in the forward, rather than I believe beyond doubt, it would have had the same impact. I actually think now, and this is incidentally, I think, a lesson that came out of the Butler inquiry, but I think it's relevant to this as well, and I said this at the time, now I would take government right out of this altogether. I would simply have published, if the intelligence services would be willing, for it, the JIC assessments, because they were absolutely strong enough on their own. And if you look at the dossier itself, and of course the dossier itself, if you just take the executive summary, and I mean, I won't go through and read it, but this executive summary wasn't drawn up by me. It was drawn up by the Joint Intelligence Committee, and they did it perfectly justifiably on the information they had before them. It's hard to come to any other conclusion than that this person has a continuing WMD program. And, I mean, we will come at a later point in this to the issue of what the truth was about Saddam, because the Iraq Survey Group, which is, in my view, an extremely important document,
indeed,
has actually resolved the conundrum and the riddle of what Saddam was up to. And we, therefore, can see what happened. But if you go back to that time, if you read the executive summary and the information that follows, I can't see how anyone could come to a different conclusion.
There were and this is possibly a problem, maybe another lesson. Intelligence is often described as joining up the dots because your information is limited. And there was a very powerful hypothesis that allowed you to join up the dots in a particular way. But there were alternative hypotheses, and they were around at the time. So it's partly a question almost of due diligence. Was there a challenge to the intelligence? Are you absolutely sure that there isn't another way of explaining all this material?
When your Prime Minister and the Joint Intelligence Committee is giving you this information, you've got to rely on the people doing it with experience and with commitment and integrity as they do. And, of course, now, with the benefit of hindsight, we look back on the situation differently. But let me just say what was troubling me at the time was, supposing we put it the other way around, and it was correct, and I wasn't going to act on it. That was the thing that worried me. And when I talked earlier about the calculus of risk changing after September the 11th, it's really, really important, I think, to understand this so far as understanding the decision I took, and frankly would take again. If there was any possibility that he could develop weapons of mass destruction, we should stop him. That was my view. That was my view then, that's my view now.